Welcome to the seventh episode of the Written Realm stream. Oh my god, I have to mute that. Alright, that's done. Um, Starting exactly on time today. Just want everyone to notice it's 3:00 and we are doing it. We are going to have, I hope, an interesting episode today because we are going to be doing some actual world building, which is something that I hadn't done before. Last week we sort of talked about the introduction and we sort of dove into some aspects of world building, but it was just describing what there is. This is going to be a lot more hands-on, where we're actually going to construct something from scratch, and we're going to try to demo all the features that there are, but do it in kind of an actionable way. I'm hoping that this is going to be the foundation for a series of videos on world building. Sort of like help, instructional videos. So I think this will be a good test run to kind of see how building a dungeon goes. So let's get right to it. Let me pop up the chat also so I can see if anyone has things to say. All right, pop up the chat. And yeah, issues that I encounter, I will be adding them to this to-do. I've already thought of one, which is that when you create a new character in a world, it is not made a builder character by default, which has a lot of useful properties, so I'll be sure to add an option to that. But okay, let's dive right into it. So we're going to be running this locally, just so I can see if there's issues that pop up. It's often helpful for me to do it that way. We are not going to have music because I'm basically going to be talking the whole time, and music is usually more for if I'm coding or if I'm playing, because there's often periods where I'm not saying or doing anything. Then it's nice to have some background thing, plus it relaxes me. But with this, I'm just going to be talking the whole time, and it's going to be hands-on, so I think we're going to do no music. This is the new world editor. So I've been talking about this. I've been transitioning all the front end from Backbone to Vue, and this is the first piece that is actually in Vue, and that works. So it's very exciting. And yeah, by the way, everything I'm doing today is something that anyone can do. Everyone has this create world button at the bottom of their world list, and anybody can go in there and create a new world. The new worlds are only quote unquote single player, which doesn't mean that it does not mean that only one player can go in it at a time. But it does mean that each player will be alone in its own world. So if 6 people are going to connect to this dungeon, they will each have to kill the dragon. They won't be able to group and do it together or anything like that. So this will be a single player world. So first you click create new world, and then you have to give a name. We're going to call that the Ruined Tower, because that will be the tower where the dragon will be holding the princess captive that you will have to go kill. So as soon as you create the world, you are taken to this screen, and this is the room editing screen. So you'll see right away at the top that there's three little sections to this navigation bar. The right side is currently selected, and this is everything that has to do with the room that you're in. So you can edit all of the room's information. There's a nicer interface for editing the description, which is full screen. And this is really nice on mobile. If you're ever doing some world building on mobile, it's really nice to be able to push a button and to have nothing but your description and remove all the other noise. So it's kind of redundant because you can edit the description here or you can edit it here, but this will really give you like that full screen view, especially on mobile. You can create new rooms. You can also connect to new rooms and disconnect to them. We'll show that in a little bit. And then there's these actions, which I've gotten feedback that aren't the clearest in the world, but they essentially give you more actions. So right now there's only one, which is set room exit. But if there is a connection, then you can also make it one way, or you can go to that exit, which is sometimes useful when you're going from one plane to another and the view doesn't have an indicator to go up and down. You can see what loads in this room, if anything, which right now is nothing. You can create room checks, which we will get into, but are essentially ways to say you are not allowed to enter or exit this room unless this condition has been satisfied. And then there are a couple of flags. Right now there's just 2. One of them is workshop, which a workshop means that you can upgrade random items there, which is a new feature we added to the game maybe last month. And no roam means that Mobs will not roam into this room, nor will they load in it, I believe. I think that's right. So no roam is useful when, say, you're defining a forest where you're going to say, I want to load 3 bucks and 2 does. And you want them to roam freely. So you're going to, I'll show you this, but you'll define a loader that will have a rule that will target the whole zone, where you will say, load 3 deers and 2 bucks. And if, say, there's one room where you don't want the mobs to roam and you don't want the mobs to load, you can just check no room for that, no roam for that room, and that will work. So it's a nifty feature. So that's everything you can do at the room level. And then zooming out a little bit, there's the zone. And the zone is mostly an organizational tool. It's a grouping of rooms that make sense for them to be together for one reason or another. Good example are forests or towns or sections of towns. If you have like a prison in a town and you want that to be its own thing, you can make that be its own room. It is where you define all of your loaders, which are the rules that govern what should go into your world. It is where you define all of your quests. So if you want someone to tell you to go do something, and we'll do that in this as well, the quest is where you would do that. And lastly, you can also define paths at the zone level. And paths are just a grouping of rooms that you want mobs to stay on, essentially. So it's a little bit like defining a zone in the sense that you can create a bunch of rooms where you can then say, hey, load it somewhere in there, I don't care where in Rome, but it's just a more limited way to do that. So then you can say you can target loaders on paths, and then there are some advanced features you can define on paths, like say, I don't want more than 2 mobs to exist per room along that path. That's not exposed in the UI currently, but there are data structures for it, and that will be coming soon. And then last is the most zoomed out level, which is the world. Right now it's all the same because you only have one room, but I guess I can show you just for the sake of, so you can see. Let me see. How do I get back to? This is what that go to is for. Go to exit for when I'm stuck. Okay, so this is the whole world, right? So I kind of see everything. And then if I select the city, then it's only going to show me the zone. Sorry, it's only going to show me the rooms in the zone that I'm in. And then the exits will be marked with these circles, which will indicate there's something here, but it's not in the zone. It will show you what all the mobs that load into it are, and then you have the room, which I was already showing, but that will show you things whether or not they're in your zone. It will show them, but it is a smaller view because we have other actions on here. If you change which room you're in and you go to a different zone, like we're about to do here, the zone will update itself, and then all of this will already be loaded up. So room, zone, world are always the 3 layers where you're kind of doing things. At the world layer, you can see list of zones and search them and add new ones. You can add mobs and you can view their stats. We'll be doing some of that later. You can see all of the items in the game. You can set certain configuration flags, like how much gold should a new character start with, and then when they are dying, which room they should go to. Transformations are kind of advanced. We're not going to cover those today. Random item profiles, those are very useful, and they basically define all of the random gear that we drop. So Realms comes with a procedural item generation engine, which creates item with random stats within a certain range and budget that we define as a builder. And these are sort of like I call them profiles because I can never really come up with a better term for them, but they're basically like sets of possible random items. So this one says, you can load anything level 7, has to be a 2-handed weapon, and it's going to be imbued, which means magical, means has stats for sure, and it has a 20% to be enchanted, which means even better. So not going to get too deep into that right now, but these are just introducing to all the concepts that exist at the world, at the zone, and at the room. You can add new builders and set their preferences to be read-only. And then you can view all of your players. And you can see where they've been and the quest that they've done. I'll do one of mine so I don't expose anyone's information publicly. But yeah, so this is my player, and I can see all of the rooms that I've been to. I can see all the rooms I haven't been to. So this is pretty useful for kind of figuring out what players are doing. You can see all the quests he's completed, all of his faction, belongings, everything he's killed, and how many of them he's killed, and then inventory, equipment, all that stuff. So this is it's a very, very nifty feature. Okay, so this is kind of like a full world. Now we're going to go back to our Rune Tower world, which is still just a room. So the first thing that you end up doing when you're creating a world is you're going to create other rooms within the world. The starting room is by default the death room, so it's where you go when you die, and it's where everyone goes when they enter the game. So everyone always starts there. The room right now is an indoor room. Room types don't really do anything functionally currently, except they look different. They probably will at some point. We're going to add some options to have different movement costs based on what room you're in. So if you're on a road, it makes sense that you would move faster and more easily, and that it would take up less stamina than if you were in a forest or something like that. The only room that does something right now is water. If you define a water room, the only way that you can enter it is if you have a boat in your inventory, so a canoe or a raft or something like that. You have to be carrying the canoe on you, and the implication is you're putting it down to ride it in the water. But if you don't have one of those, then you can't get into the water rooms. So they can be nice for... Oh, also, water rooms have another feature, which is any water room that you define will automatically appear on the map. So that's kind of a nice feature of them. But currently they are just for looks. And we're going to start by saying that this is a road, I guess. And we'll just call it like on the long road or something. Or... how about this? On the road to adventure. Every room can have a description, and it's optional. You don't have to write one. But a lot of mods, they try to, rightfully so, to create an atmosphere for the room that you're in. And some room descriptions are very long. There are some descriptions that are 6, 7, 8 sentences long. There are some that are very, very short. We personally, Patrick and me, when we work on Unbroken World, our guideline is kind of 2 sentences per room at least. We try to always write at least 2 sentences. And then we only go above there if we have a reason to. A couple of basic do's and don'ts with regards to room descriptions. You don't want to assume directionality. This is a classic mistake where someone will write a room where they're saying, the road now narrows into a ravine or something like that. Or you say... the road turns northward and continues towards the city, and that's fine. But if you only put that, someone who comes from the opposite direction, they'll be like, well, what do you mean the road turned northwards? No, it's turning southward for me. So why is this room saying that it's turning northward? So it's one of those accessibility things where if you're writing a game with any hopes of having like blind players play your game, or any people who need to have it read to them versus being able to see the map, essentially, it really helps to write room descriptions that just don't make assumptions in terms of where you're coming from. Then there's a lot of other rules that some games do and some games don't. Let's not worry about them too much, but we're going to do a little thing here that we're going to say the road is, and I'm just making these up, but we'll say the road is well paved, and we'll say, well, here you can't go west, so we don't have a directionality problem. It will say continuing east until a tower peaks over the valleys, something like that. So the road is well paved, and then we're going to have some valleys on the way to the tower, and then we'll have the tower. And then we're going to make this room a road. You can write notes if you want. Those are only visible to the builder. They're not visible to the users. But it can help sometimes, especially if you're collaborating. So, multiple builders, or even if you're alone, honestly, it helps sometimes to remember, oh yeah, this is why I did this. So the room is now gray, indicating that it's a road, and it now has this description. So we're going to create a new room. To do that, you just click on the Create New Room button. So boom, you have a new room. By default, it has been given a name of Untitled Room. You should always at least give a name to your rooms, even if you don't give them a description. You really, really should. And so here we're just going to say on the road. And what a possible description would be, the road continues, and then you would say east until a tower beyond the hills. And then you can say and west until a blockade in the road or something, because you can't continue west, right? So something like that. But right, we're talking about both directions. And 1 sentence, 2 sentences, you can add some flavor items, flowers bloom on the side of the road, busy bees butinating their. I think that's what it's called, right? When the bees get the thing or whatever. Their days away, something like that, right? Doesn't really matter. And then, so now we have this new button, which gives us an option to also unlink the room. So say that we now don't want these rooms to be connected here, but we want them to go through a little hook here. You can just do this, and now they are separate rooms where the users cannot go from one to the other. If you want to recreate them, you just do link, and there are now a couple of new options here. One of them is make one way, and if you do, the line will turn to an arrow, and although that means that you can go west, but you can't go back east. One directional. The other feature in these extra actions, well, you can set your room exit. So, well, in this case, we only have 2 rooms, so there's not much of a point. But if we had another room here, we could choose it. There's only one room here, so it doesn't matter. And then you can this go to exit. So that's useful if you change the Z plane. So the map is sort of 2-dimensional. Well, sort of. It's definitely 2-dimensional. It's just on canvas. But you can still define a z-axis, and if you change something to be z is -1, then it's just going to be kind of like out of view like this. And then the way that you move from room to room in here is you click on the room and that centers it. Well, in this case, the room is not on your viewport. So how do you get there? Well, you go here and you say go to exit, and now you're in this room. So that's something that's just kind of useful. If you have rooms that are connected by up and down, the UI will actually give you a helper for that. I'll show you this right now. So let's change this back to 0. There's a hotkey for editing room information, which is E. So if you just type E, it will just pop up like this. It's a very commonly used operation. So unsurprisingly, we made one. But so let's assume that here I want to have something that goes up, like a set of stairs or something. Then I would do this, create up. And so now it moved the z-plane, but it also knows that because there's a room that's exactly up or down, then it will offer you the option of going to that room if you do that. But in this case, we do not want that room to be here. We want to continue on the road, so we're going to decrease the z-coordinates to 0. We're going to increase the x from 0 to 1. And now it's here, and we're going to link it. Okay? Now, you say on the rutted road. And maybe you can say deep ruts line. You know what? I'm really not going to do like live creative writing because it's just going to be painful for everyone. If you want to look at dash that we've done, take a look at the Unbroken World. But yeah, a couple sentences, plenty. Don't assume directionality. And some people also say don't assume too much about like the size of your character. So some people will say that something requires someone to crouch, and that's fine, but that sort of assumes that the person is at a certain height already. And so what if you have like a gnome versus like versus an ogre? They're going to be very differently sized, and so you're kind of making assumptions about who's looking at your world. So that's something that you kind of try not to do. Okay. So we do that, and then, all right, so we're going to do this. We're going to do a little turn in the road. This one will also be curve in the road. And then this one will be a sharp turn, sharp curve. Maybe we just went around a hill, so we did that. So we'll say a road by the hills. It's hard to never assume directionality, and you'll almost certainly do it accidentally. And sometimes it's okay, especially if there's kind of like one main flow of the zone you're working on, where you always know everyone will come from the same direction, and it's really important to drive one point across. You can do it. It's just something to be mindful of. Road by the hills, okay. And what we're going to do, we'll continue the road here. Then we'll say road near the tower. road in front of the tower. And the next one will be the first room of the actual tower. Okay, so that's when you actually got there. So we'll do that, and then for this one, we're going to create a different zone. So we're going to have the tower be its own zone, which is different from the road. Okay. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go here, we're going to click add, and we're going to say the tower. So the zone has no rooms, therefore there's nothing to show in this view, and the way that you add rooms to a zone is you go to a room which is not in that zone, and then you assign it to that zone. So we're going to do that. This will be the first tower room, so we're going to say the tower. And this is an indoor room, right? So we're going to select that so it has this nice color. So it is differentiated from the other two. And now already we're seeing some benefit to having these views, right? Where this one shows everything, this one cuts here to where the zone limit is, and then this one is the actual tower, right? So that's kind of nice. And one thing we're going to do here is we're also going to add a little forest right before the tower, where there will be perhaps some wildlife that we can kill on the way to the tower so that we are strong enough to defeat the dragon. Yeah. So let's do that. We're going to create some forest rooms. We're going to select the forest type. And for this, for now, we'll leave it in the starting zone, but we'll also make that be its own zone as well. So we're going to say forest by the road. We are going to create its own zone for this, and we'll say the zone is called the forest. And we will assign this to be the forest. Okay. Okay. And here we'll say spark forest near the tower, and maybe from here we'll say in the description that we can see the tower from here because it's kind of close. And then we'll create some deeper rooms where we'll say deeper in the forest. And then connect this. This is like a lush part of the forest. And maybe up here is like the heart of the forest. You get the idea. Okay, so then we'll be able to create maybe some mobs in here that can like roam a little bit, right? And already there's some little bit of coloration. Let me think what else we could do here. What we could do here is we could say that this is a road over a bridge. Then I'll show you some water rooms, including a cool world building trick. So this will be on a river. And like this, you'll see that when you enter the world, that room will be visible right away. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a room here. And think about this. Move this to -1. We're going to create another room here. And then we are going to disconnect here. Move that one down, move it one more on the X. Okay, so let me go to the exit here, move this one, move this one to -1. Okay, ooh, it's offset. 2. This one should also be at 2. And then for this one, we'll also create a north exit. We'll move that one back up to 0. There's already something there, which is why you're seeing this error. This works. All right, cool. So what we did here is we created a little river goes under their bridge effect, right? Where there's like a little change here. And the way that you do that is you go on here and you have to create one room which is exactly below the bridge and which is connected to both of the other rooms right before it. So if you go to exit here, this one is 2 minus 1 minus 1, right? And you'll see that the bridge will be 2 minus 1 0. It's not. And yet it's still working. That's interesting. That's what I intended to do. This works too, but yeah, the way that you want to do it is you want to have the river room be exactly under the room. So that's kind of a neat effect, right? Okay. And these water rooms, right now they're not accessible, so it's no worries, but they will be shown to all players by default when they enter the world. Rooms that you haven't seen yet are not shown on the map. You have to kind of like go through them one by one. But water rooms are what we call landmark rooms, which are visible everywhere. And this makes me think that I should add landmark room as a room flag. So I've got this little Trello list, and whenever on stream I run into an issue, I write it here to make sure that I will go and do it. Expose landmark room in option in room details. Okay, cool. Very helpful for me. Great. So now we have the road, now we have the forest, and then we're going to have the tower. So a tower goes up, and you have two options here. When you go up, a change in the z-plane always obfuscates anything that is not in that same z-plane. So whatever your z value is on that room, you will only see other rooms that are at the same z level, right? That's like the vision plane that we have. And sometimes that's what you want. So maybe you want to build this tower so that you go up, and then when you go up, you're in this room and there's really nothing else. It kind of makes you feel like really zoned in on what's going on. But you can also keep it being an up exit, but then lay it out differently. So let's do that to see what it looks like. So we're gonna put it back on the z as 0, but then we're gonna set that y is 1 rather than y is 0, so it should move it north 1, right? So now you have the way that it looks now is, well, it kind of looks like it's going north, but because we're used to looking at things, from up to down, it also really looks like a tower. And so to keep doing that, you kind of have to keep repeating this, but it's not too bad. All right, so now we've got first floor, second floor, third floor. We'll do 4 floors to our tower. Okay. Up. Same operation. Move this to 1. Move this to 3. Right. So now we have. You know what? We'll do a 5th, so it really surmounts even the forest, so it looks like it's really, really, really tall. And this will be top of the tower, and then maybe from here. So a lot of people will tell you not to do this. Don't do from here, you see the forest stretching westward until a river. And the reason why you're not supposed to do that is because it's kind of prescriptive to the user, but also, like, what if you're role playing someone who's blind? Then, how can that person see, right? Now, if you take that too far, you can describe anything, because what if someone has, is deprived of all 5 senses, then they just can't play their game? That's silly, right? So you have to make some assumptions. But again, there's something to be mindful of. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Top of the tower, cool. So this one, I do want a proper room name for everything. This one will be near the top of the tower. This one will be middle of the tower, or we'll just say in the tower, in the ruined tower. And then this will be spiraling stairs in the tower, maybe. And this is back to bottom of the tower, of course. All right, cool. This is not how you have to lay it out. Like I was saying, you can move them up. You can also do, and I do this sometimes, where you sort of create it going up by not just moving it straight north, but also offsetting it a little bit, like here. So like this would say here, and then you would put another one here, and then you kind of go up diagonally like that to kind of give the impression of a faux, like, perspective, or three-dimensional thing, where because you're changing from on the z-axis, then the perspective is being sent that way. So that's also a way that sometimes people represent something going up. Moving back to 9. Wonderful. And I think that this will be pretty good for rooms. I think maybe I kind of want there to be something before you can even get to the dragon. Maybe like some kind of getting a key from someone who already tried or something. It's a little convoluted, but that's okay. So we're gonna create here a room here, and we're gonna say an alcove. It'll be like an alcove that's kind of like to the side of the tower or something like that, and we'll put something in here. All right, so I think that's enough for sort of pure room creations. I don't really think we need much of any flags right now, unless we wanted to create something that mobs couldn't run into, but I don't think we need to. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start creating some mobs. Yeah, we're going to start creating some mobs. So what mobs do we want? We want the princess. We want the dragon. We want a couple of bucks so that we can kill them on the way to the tower, maybe like, gain a level or two. And we want to... Any other mobs that we want? I think that's kind of it, right? Yeah, that's kind of it. Okay. And I'm trying to think. No, that's pretty much it. Let's get to it. So there are no mobs currently defined in this realm. We're going to add one. So level goes from 1 to 20. It's currently the highest level that you can do. It may not always be that way, but currently that's how it is. And we have already like an EXP table that is sort of set, where when you build a mob to be a certain level, we're going to automatically assign a certain value for its experience. So the more high level a mob is, the more they give you experience. So it has a name. In general, we recommend for the name, but there's really no restriction for a name. We're going to say here that it will be a strong buck or something like that. Maybe we'll say it's a scared doe, because that way it's easier for you to slaughter it. So it will be a female. It will not attack at all. So there's 4 values for aggression. You can set something to be passive, in case of which it will not even fight back. Actually, we're going to do that for this one. That's great. We're going to make it level 2. That way we'll level quickly. And you can set its gender, obviously. You can set its mob type, which currently is purely cosmetic, but we are going to have potentially some things that are affected by this. It's not purely cosmetic now that I think about it. Humanoids and beasts will give you different actions when you hover over them. So humanoids will they will not assume that you want to kill them. So you're not going to get a kill action by default, whereas with beasts you will. And other things like whether or not you can set them up as merchant and stuff like that. But in this case, so it's going to be a beast. And mob class is just like creating a player. We assign the stats of the mob differently based on the class that it is. This doesn't really come into play unless you intend for them to use abilities, which basically makes that you can have a mob use all the same abilities as a human of its level would do. But it can help if you create a thief, which is a very dexterity based class, and you just really load it up with a lot of dex gear. You might create a monster that's just kind of difficult to hit, and that's pretty dodgy. So you can do stuff like that. But for now, we're just going to leave this as warrior. And then hit is what is the message that gets displayed when you do it or when someone else sees you do it. So for a mob, it's always going to be third person, I guess. But we do plan to have features where you can jump into mobs and do stuff, and so that's what that's for. So in here we're going to say, what does a doe do? Does it bite you? Does it kick you? What does a doe do really? We'll say they just bite. I think yeah, they didn't have teeth. I don't know if deer really bite, but we'll just I'm not gonna look that up right now. So we'll create the Scardo, which is a level 2 totally passive mob. And when you do that, you see a few things. So you see those hit messages, the aggression, you see it doesn't use the ability. If you want to delete the mob, you go here. And then it generated automatically a set of stats that are based off the level that you gave. And you can get these stats back if you hit here the suggest stats button if you change it to something else. So say that you want to make this stronger, you want it to have 100 health versus rather than just 50 health. You can save that, and then if you say suggest stats, this will go back to 51. It won't save it. You can hit cancel, but it allows you to always see what would have the game automatically assign a mob of that level to be, and then it kind of allows you to deviate from those values and sort of know how strong you're making it relatively to other things. Because by default, we try to make it so that you have to create very little, and there's already a lot of default functionality available to you. So yeah. Health is just, how many health the mob has, and then if it goes to 0, he dies. Mana is not useful unless it's a mage or cleric mob that also uses abilities, and then it will use their mana. So experience is how much experience they give, and you can totally change that. So if you want this guy to give 50, you can set that here. Attack power is how hard they hit. In general, all of this is available if you go to the site, and then if you just click on this help button, and then you go to formulas. All of this is explained down here, and in general, we try to explain like how does damage come from and how do these formulas get generated. They're pretty simple. We try to keep them pretty basic and transparent. So how much damage you do physically is a factor of how much damage your weapon does, and then your attack power divided by 16, which means that if you set this mob to have 16 attack power, then, and it also gets, because it has no weapon and it's a beast, it will get some damage by default, but the portion of its damage that comes from attack power in here will be 1 point, because 16 divided by 16 is 1. Spell power is the same deal, but just for the spells, and typically spell power is a function of intelligence. Crit rating is a value which will add up to something that determines your crit percentage. And we can't show a percentage in here because your crit rating actually depends on your level. So if you have a 100 crit rating, you're going to have a higher crit rating chance at level 10 rather than level 11. The reason for that is that we calculated, that if you're against an opponent who's the same level, it's really based on like what level your opponent is. So basically, the higher level you are, the more you're going to tend to fight monsters that are high level themselves, and therefore you will need more crit rating to kind of maintain the percentage that you had at lower levels. Armor works the same way. So armor reduces damage done by physical attacks only, and the more armor your opponent has and the higher level they are, the less your armor will do against them. So you're always comparing your level to their level, which is why it's a rating, like crit rating, but it translates to a percentage at the end. Dodge, same thing. Dodge rating, so you get a certain number of points of dodge and they convert to a percentage. Resilience is all kinds of damage. So not just physical damage, but physical and magical damage. That's resilience. In this case, we're going to keep all of them default. And then if you check this, I guess I did edit it, huh? Interesting. I must have hit save and I hit save by mistake. If you hit use default stats, then it will set all those stats back to their default values. Actually, there's a bug in here that you have to uncheck it and recheck it. If I'd just done this, it wouldn't have done it. So I'm going to add this here. Checking. Where's the screen? Checking use default stats. Should recompute the stats if it was not previously checked. Hero would be proud of me for using the Trello. Okay, and then elite is, so that's if you want to make a mob like really, really, really hard for its level. And what it will basically do is it will quadruple all of its stats. And yeah, so it will have 4 times the health, 4 times the armor, 4 times the strength, 4 times the attack power. Everything will be multiplied by 4. So they're much, much, much stronger. And if you do elite and then have them use abilities, you can create really, really tough monsters. So you don't have to think about it too much more other than just doing that. But yeah, so this is the bug I just entered where I guess it's not just use default stats, but if you say elite, it won't change it right away. You have to uncheck this and recheck that. I'll fix it, no worries. For now, we're just going to keep it a plain dough. And so these are faction relationships. You're probably not going to use factions for a little while, but if you were creating a humanoid mob and you wanted them to be an orc or, a trolloc or an undead or some kind of a faction that is in conflict with another faction, then this is where you would do it. And you would go here. There's no factions here, so it's not showing any. But if there were one, you would see options that drop down here of which factions you can select. The room description is the description that people see when they are in the room of this mob. And by default, it will always be the name of the mob followed by is here. This is why you don't want to name your mobs as just like scared doe. Because if you do that, we're just going to say scared doe is here. And that doesn't read like a proper English sentence the way that a scared doe is here. So you always sort of want to start it with an article if you can. Unless it's like an actual proper noun. So if you have like, John Doe is here, then you can name it John Doe, and John Doe is here is fine. But always think about how will it read in English, right? Because it is a text-based game, and you can override that. So if you want to say a doe munches on a tuft of grass as it surveys its surroundings, right? So now anyone who enters the room will see a doe munches on a tuft of grass as it surveys its surroundings. Look description is what you see when you're looking at it. There's like a little text blurb under anything you look at that you can set, and by default it's nothing. But if you want to convey some additional information about it, so say it looks young and full of energy, which mostly, it nervously scans its surrounding, ready to bounce away at the first sound, or something like that, right? You're just giving more information, or maybe you can say it has like a scar somewhere, or it has really big black beady eyes, or whatever you want. And then the targeted by keywords, so by default, we will generate these for you, which is what the defaulting to is telling you here. And basically by default, we're going to take the name of the mob, we're going to remove the articles, and then as well as a bunch of common keywords that we know we never want to use to qualify something like of and in and all of those. And then those become the keywords to interact with it. So right now you enter this room with this mob. If you were to say look doe, you would see it, and this is why, because those keywords get set. If you wanted to, it was scared, it's a doe, and then you wanted to say like young or something because it's a young scared doe, then you would just add that, and now young would be a keyword by which you could also select this mob, right? So that's that. All of these are sort of advanced things, but a lot of them are very potent. So reactions are a way to program a little bit what a mob can do based on what happens in its environment. So say whenever you enter the room of this doe, you enter the flee command, then every time you enter, the doe is going to flee, which that would be really annoying because you basically can never kill it. It will just keep fleeing forever. But maybe you just wanted to say that whenever a room is enter, it looks nervous. Okay, whenever you enter the room, it's nervous. So we can do that. And now anyone who enters this room, the game will print a scared doe looks nervous. Other kinds of reactions that you can add, something is said when, and then the option is what are the words being said. So say that like, well, it doesn't make sense for a doe because a doe can't understand what you're saying. But if it's humanoid and then you say help, maybe you could say help, what do you need help with? So that's a really easy way to program a mob to do something that you want. If a certain amount of time has elapsed, we call these periodic reactions, where the option then becomes how much time you want to elapse. If you enter 50 here, and then you say life is great, then every 50 seconds this mob is going to say life is great. Mob loads is a reaction that you want to do whenever this mob enters the world. You will fire this. So say whenever a doe is loaded, you want it to shake its head from side to side, or for whatever, shakes its head from side to side. Then it will do that every single time that it loads into the world. It'll just do it once. Player connects is a very specialized one right now. We use that in Bluefinch Village. When you first connect, there's like a little lady who sort of tells you, hey, you're new here, blah, blah, blah. Actually, she also uses another component called reaction condition, but there's no UI for those, so I'm not going to cover those right now. And then finally, item is received, where you can say something if a particular kind of item is received, and the option is the ID of the item. So say that we create a piece of wood and its ID is 123. If I say item is received, option 123, react to say thanks for the wood, then anytime that you give a piece of wood to this mob, it will tell you thanks for the wood. So you can do that with quests too, but it's a lot simpler to just add reactions. Merchant inventory, if you have item templates that you want a mob to sell and to offer random items for sale, this is where you do it. Right now we don't have any templates defined, so we can't do this. But once we do, you can go in here and you can say, you create a bag, and then you have a merchant and you want him to sell a bag to you. You can come in there and say sell a bag, sell 2 bags, right? You would change the copies to 2 and say add. So that works pretty well. Mob loaded by will just tell you what loaders are currently loading this mob, which is right now nobody. And then if you click on load mob in room, then it will try to create a loader for you in that room. So we'll use that, but not in the road. We'll use that in the forest. Add inventory item means you're just adding an item that has a chance to load on this mob. For example, maybe you want every deer that you load in the game to load a deer pelt, so that you can turn that into someone in exchange for something that maybe they crafted with the pelt or something like that, right? So then you create a pelt item template and then you load them here. Loads random items is a really awesome, in my opinion, feature that lets you kind of very, very quickly create a farming incentive for your players, where you can say that whenever a mob is loaded, it will come with some random item. And this taps into the random item generation engine that Realms has, and it will be based on the level of the mob. So if you have a mob who's level 7 and you say load 20% imbued, 5% enchanted, then 20% of the time he'll load a random level 7 item that's imbued, and then 5% of the chance he'll actually be enchanted instead. If you want to change those percentages, you can change them here, and then you can add what we call a load specification, where you can kind of restrict what kind of random things drop. So if you want a weapon master to only ever load 2-handed weapons, so when you kill him you get his nice weapons, you can just come up here and say 2-handed weapon. Random drops make no sense on beasts. They really only make sense on humanoids, because why would a doe have a sword? It wouldn't. So we don't prevent you from doing it, but I would recommend only doing that with humanoids. Okay, so we now have our doe. We are going to make it not load items. It's got a couple of reactions, and we are basically ready to make it load into the world. I am going to add a deer pelt to this to demonstrate the item to inventory thing. So we're now going to add an item template, which works very much like a mob template does, where you come in and then you say, so this will be a deer pelt. Similarly, I encourage you for items to create them starting with an article. So say a pelt, or if it's something very important, you can say the crown or something like that. But it's not good if you just call this deer pelt, because then the game is going to write, you get deer pelt, which doesn't sound right. You get a deer pelt, right? You're trying to write sentences. So include the article. Level will be 1, and there's a few item types. So unlike mobs, the item type actually is quite consequential. By default, all items are inert, which means they don't really do anything special. They're just placeholders. They can be equipable, in case of which they become something that can be worn on an armor slot or a weapon. So that gives you a whole new array of functionality. They can be a container where they can contain other items like bags and pouches and sacks or whatever. They can be a trash item. What a trash item does is anything, it's a container, and anything you put into it is deleted. So imagine that you write a room where you have a great furnace or a great lava hole, and you create a container that is, a lava lake or something, and you put it in your room, you make it not pickable, and you make it be a trash item. Anything someone puts in the lava will be destroyed from the game. So that's what that does. Quest does not do anything currently other than it will indicate to the user that it's a quest item. Which is just like sometimes someone picks something up and they don't know if it's valuable or not. It's just useful to have a hint that says, hey, this is a quest item. I really care about this. Food means that it's an item that you can use the eat command on, and what the eating does is it gives you back stamina. So stamina is what gets consumed when you move from room to room. You start with 100 stamina. If you move 10 rooms, you have lost 20 stamina because it's 2 moves per room currently. And if you eat any piece of food, it will give you back, I believe, 25%. I don't know if that's configurable a lot. I forget. And cost is how much it would sell for. So by default, all items have no cost. If you define a cost for like 100 for this deer pelt, and you put that item on a merchant, he will sell it to you for 100 gold. Actually, he will sell it to you for 200 gold. He will buy it from you for 100 gold. But merchants always sell you stuff for more than they buy it from you, because realism. That's how the real world works. In this case, we're just going to say... We're not really going to have a merchant, but we're going to say that it's worth something. We're going to say 10. And we're going to just leave it inert. And as a note, we'll say nothing. All right. This is the basic item info, and these are basically all of the same mechanisms as we just covered for mobs. So there's your description when your item is in the room. That's what you see when it's on the ground. There's a description when you are looking at it. That does default to something, where by default it just says it is, and then repeats the name, which is another reason why you don't want to say deer pelt, because it would just say it is deer pelt. And the keywords also, they strip the article, they strip the repetitive words, and then you can define your own. So say I want this deer pelt to also be accessible via hairy. So hairy deer pelt. That works too. And then there's a couple of options. Is persistent is something that I just added actually. I literally pushed this live a couple of days ago. I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but because they don't matter for single player worlds. But in multiplayer worlds, when the world reboots, all the items on the ground get deleted, and this essentially prevents that operation from happening for some items. Can be picked up, though, is very relevant. So if you're creating the lava flow I was talking about, where it's an item that's a trash item, you would definitely want to uncheck can be picked up. Anything that is supposed to be a big, massive item, like a fountain or, it's an item that can be looked at. You want to do things with it, like put things in it, like a weapons rack or something, but you don't want someone to run away with it, uncheck that. Okay, so now we have our deer pelt. When we go back to our dough, we can come up here and we can say, it already selects it, deer pelt, 100% chance to load, so it will always load. You could move that to 70 or whatever, and then it only loads sometimes, but we'll do this. So every deer will load a pelt, which will be worth about 10 gold, and maybe we'll put a merchant on the road. We'll see. We'll see how crazy we go with this. I do want to show one more thing for items, which is, and it's a good thing because we need a starting weapon, is equipment. So we'll start by building a sword. It will be level 1, and it will be equipable. It will have no cost because we don't want to be able to sell it. And for the notes, we're going to write that it's the starting weapon for all players. Much like mobs, because we did that, we now have a stat bonuses section. And there is no suggest on this because stats is one of those things where any weapon is only going to have like a few stats. So, a random piece of gear by default, imbued gear is going to have 2 boosted stats. Enchanted items can have 3. And so, if we were to suggest, it's not like mobs where a level 2 mob every level 2 mob by default has the same stats. Each item is totally unique, and we have it on the to-do list to give you an indication when you define something that's like 10 strength, like how good it is really versus a randomly generated weapon. But these are all of the attributes. So how many extra hit points does this weapon give you? Does it make you regenerate any health, any extra health? And health regen works out of in combat too, which is kind of nice. Usually you don't regen health in combat, but with items that give you regen bonus, you do. Whether you have extra mana, same thing for mana regen. Strength increases your damage, constitution increases your health, intelligence increases your spell damage, and dexterity increases your critical strike rating. Attack power increases your physical damage. So basically, strength produces attack power, intelligence produces spell power, and dexterity produces crit rating. Resilience and dodge rating are sort of their own stats and can be only gained through, at least for dodge, through items that have dexterity. Resilience, you also get some if you equip a shield. It gives you 20 or 25% resilience. I know Patrick changed that recently, but I forget which one it is now. It's 20 or 25. So in this case, for the sword, we wanted to give us a pretty good strength boost, so we're going to say it gives us 20 strength and then an extra 10 health. That's what this does, right? So now these change to that. And there is a way to define like starting kits, but they're not exposed in the UI, so I can't show you that right now. And I already have a to-do for it, so I don't need to add it to Trello. But so what we're going to do instead is we are going to load that item on the ground in that room, in the first room. So we're going to go back to the starting area, which is right here. And we're going to say, load this item in here. The way that we do that is you have to go to the zone. You have to go to the zone layout because that's where loaders are defined. And you go to loaders and then you click add. And all loaders have an optional name. Here we're going to say initial weapon load. And it will be starting zone. You can change that. That's how you change how one loader is from one zone to another. And respawn wait is how long the game will wait before adding another copy of that item if there isn't one already in the room. So if you specify a loader, and I'll show you this in a second, as targeting a room, then the game will kind of check when the loader is run, is there something of that template in that room? How long has it been since I've loaded the last thing? And if it's been long enough, then I will load it. Conditions are an advanced feature we're definitely not going to cover today, but you can define at the zone level a concept of zone data. A good example of this is like capture the flag scenarios, where one piece of data could be like which faction owns the flag. Is it, so your data attribute would be flag, and it could have two values, human or orc, and say that you wanted to add some strong mobs when the opposite faction has the flag to help them recapture it. Then you can say here, if flag equal orc, and it's basically you're writing Python that will be interpreted, then this loader will only run if the flag is equal to orc. But like I said, that's an advanced feature. We're not going to do that here. Besides, there's no UI for zone data right now, but it's just something that exists, so I'm mentioning it here. But so here we're going to say initial weapon. It will be in the starting zone. Every 300 seconds is fine, and we now have a loader. Okay. Now, there's this section called rules, and a loader by itself won't do anything. You need to tell it what to do. So you can load three different kinds of things. You can load a mob, or a template, or an item, or you can load a transformation, which is a way to transform whatever it is that you have just loaded. And you have to define transformations for that to happen, but I'll give you an example of one. By default, if you load a mob into an entire zone without specifying which room it zones in, which is what we're doing right now, then the mob will be set to roam anywhere in the zone that it wants. So it's just going to move, right? If you specify to load in a certain room, then it will stay in that room. When a mob roams, it has a 5% chance every 15 seconds of changing its room. It's the default value. You can say, as a transformation template, load this mob, which usually roams every 5%, and then load a transformation template that changes his roam percentage to 100. And that particular copy, that particular instance of this mob template will change room not 5% of the time, but 100% of the time. So transformation templates are sort of a way to create exceptions to your templates. In this case, we're going to load the item, which is the sword. So we're going to select that. We're only going to load one of them, and then it's showing us the two items. If you type things, it will filter it down. So we're saying, I want to load a sword, save. And here we loaded it into the entire zone. We don't want to do that. We want to change that to load in the room. Okay. By default, it selects whichever room you're in the context when you do this. So now we have created a rule to load this object and then to put it in this room. And now if you go to this room, you will see that there is a little 1 next to the loads, and that will tell you that there is now an item in this room, which is a sword, loaded by this loader, and you can go to the loader here. So we now have the starting weapon that is here. So what about the mob? How do I load the mob? Well, we're going to try to load a deer right here off the road. And, because he'll be by the hills, and he just kind of got lost, and we're going to put a single deer in here. So because this room is selected as the context here, right? So we kind of know which room you're selected, even though we're in the context of the world. If you select the zone, and then you go to loads, if you select the mob, down here, remember, there's this load mob in room action that I was showing you. If you click that, it just automatically created for you a load in the correct room of that mob. So you could have created it by going here and saying loads, add, etc. But this is just a shortcut that does it for you. It's kind of neat. So now inside of that room, there's a doe that loads in here, and it will never move. It will always be here. Now, in this forest, we want the does to roam freely. We want them to never be, in the same room for too long. We want them to move around. Because this is a self-contained zone where you have all of these, we're going to be able to we'll load, say, 4 copies of the deer, of the doe, and then because they're set to target the zone rather than the room, they'll be free to go wherever they want. So let's go ahead and do that. For this, we're actually going to create the loader. So we're going to say forest population, because this will be the population of the forest. And we're going to add a rule that says load this deer, this doe, anywhere in the zone. We don't care where it is. Boom. And now we'll be nice and random. You can also define rules that target the output of other rules. This is what a transformation template does, but you can also do this from item templates to mob templates. So you know how earlier we created this doe that had a pelt in it, right? So if you go down here, it's loading a deer pelt 100% of the time. Maybe sometimes for some of them, for the ones that are roaming freely in the forest, we also want them to load, I really don't know what they would load, but we'll just say we'll just say deer teeth, okay? A broken tooth. The deer has a broken tooth. Boom. And it fell. So when you killed, it went to its corpse. So if you go here in the loader, the forest population, and you can create a new rule which loads this broken tooth item. And what you're saying here is you're saying that it targets a rule. It targets another rule. When you go here, this is not going to work, is it? Unfortunately. It's not working, so that's a bug. This is something we do a lot, so I know it works on the back end, but the UI for this is clearly broken. So we're not going to do that because we sort of can't. But that's okay. That's something that you can do. You can target the output of a previous rule. Okay, so what do we have now? We have a sword that's loading here. We have one deer that's kind of hanging out here by himself. And then we have a bunch of little deers here, which are super harmless and they won't even fight back. They're very, very easy. And then you're in here. So what do we want here? Well, we're definitely going to want the dragon. We're going to want the princess. We're going to want the corpse of that guy that has a key that you need to get into the door. I'm trying to think, do we want to have like a humanoid guy who's alive and who tries to sell you something? Like a random level 3 two-handed weapon or something. That'd be expensive though. You wouldn't have one to sell it. I would have to give the starting weapon to because let's not do that for now. Let's just create the skeleton, the dragon, and the princess. So we're going to say that the dragon is going to be level 3. Which is big for us because this is a tiny world and there is no one who's high level, so this will be an enormous dragon. And it will be level 3. And it will definitely be aggressive to everyone. So passive means it doesn't do anything. Normal means that it will listen to whatever faction rules that it has. So if you have one faction that's human and one that's orc, if you set aggression to normal, then they will normally attack each other when they are in the same room because opposite factions are hostile to each other. But if you're not a hostile faction, then it won't attack you. If you set players, on the other hand, then the mob will attack all players, regardless of what faction they're in, regardless of anything. It's just going to attack all players. If you say all, it will attack all players and mobs. Whatever enters its room is going to attack it. So here in this case, we're going to say it's going to attack players. And for hit message, we're going to try to get a little creative here. We're going to say something with fire. Torches you, maybe? I don't know. Does that work? Oops. There's a bug here. You've seen it a couple times already. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but I have it set so that if you click outside this box anywhere, it closes that window because that's something that you often want, but then when I open to click here and I finish it here, that closes it too. So I need a way to like detect that I've clicked down and then not close the window if I was still clicked down. Kind of a tall order, honestly. All right, let me redo this. It's definitely a female. She's super pissed. It's a warrior, and then we'll say torches. And it is for sure a beast. One thing we use plant for, it's kind of a convention, but something that's a plant is we're only going to load them in a certain room. We're saying a plant can't move, basically. So we have trees that are animated trees and stuff, but they never move. Maybe we'll make that be something that the loaders, if you define a plant to load in a random zone, then it will load it in random rooms, but then it won't move. That'd be cool. I should do that, actually. All right, cool. Good ideas. All right, let me save this. So now we have our female dragon. It's got a description in room. We can leave all that stuff as is. And do we want to use abilities? Let's do it. Let's say we'll use abilities. No reaction. Okay. Then we'll create a princess. She will be level 1. She will be female. She will not be aggressive. And she's not going to do combat. So we'll just leave her here. We'll make her a little mage. She's a special princess. Of course. I kind of would like to make like some kind of someone warning him or giving him a quest, or so it would have to be like a chaperone or some kind, or like someone who was supposed to watch over her, but now he saw the dragon take her and he's begging you to go get her back, right? So like that would be a good thing for that. Maybe it's his daughter, so we'll say nobleman. And he's like level 2 or whatever. He's not quite as helpless, but he's a male. His aggression is normal. He's a humanoid, he's a warrior, and he hits. Alright? And so we'll create a quest with this guy because all quests need a mob to anchor them. So he'll do that. And then I wonder if yeah, I'll just demonstrate how to add something to the merchant inventory. So say we create a bag. So it's a container, it's level 1, it has no cost. Well, let's have it have a cost. Let's have it have like 10, a cost of 10. When I go to my nobleman, maybe he can sell that. So now we come here and we sell the bag. We say one of them. So it's a container. So now he will offer that. Let's make sure to give this guy... Oops, in the wrong world. Let's make sure to give the starting player a little bit of gold. So let's go in here and config and say that when they start, they'll start with 100 gold, just so he can buy that bag, and I can demonstrate that. So an enormous dragon, and then maybe he will be like right on the bridge. You'll meet him pretty early on. Okay, so we're just gonna add this guy in here. No, not the dragon. We're gonna add the nobleman. So all you have to do is click this button because we already know we're over the bridge. Boom, done. So now the nobleman will load in here. So that's good, right? So that nobleman will load a bag to be sold, and we also want him to do a quest. To ask you to go rescue his daughter, right? So we're going to create a quest for him. The quest is going to be rescue the princess, of course. And so all quests have to be tied to someone because someone has to tell you what to do and you have to go back and tell someone that you've done that thing. So we select the nobleman and all quests are tied to zones. It is in the starting zone, so we save it. Suggested level is just something that we don't display yet, but we're going to display on the UI to just say, this quest is for level X and above. It's also useful for if you have several builders, or even just for yourself, so you can kind of remember how hard you meant to do this quest when you go back. Requirements. The most important thing is repeatable after, which means how long do you have to wait before you can redo this quest? And 0 means no time at all. So 0 means that the quest is immediately repeatable. If someone asks you to go bring him, like the quest in Bluefinch, where someone asks you to go bring him 4 deer pelts in exchange for armor, and you have 8 pelts on you, you can do 1 completion and then you can do a completion immediately after. That's repeatable after 0. If on the other hand you have a quest where you only want the person to do it once ever, so you want someone to deliver a letter to someone, and then once it's been delivered, they're done. You don't want them to restart the quest. You set the quest to -1, or to anything negative, actually. Anything not positive or not 0. And if you want the quest to have a certain delay before it can be done again, so, World of Warcraft did a lot of stuff with dailies, where, you can do a quest once a day. If you wanted to do that, these are in seconds, I believe, then you would just enter, however many seconds are in a day. Is it what, like 72,000 or something? What is it? It's 24 hours. No, way more than that. 86,000. So you could do that, and that would be a daily. You can have a quest depend on another quest, so you can create chains that way, where say, before you rescue the princess, maybe this guy asks you to go bring him some sustenance because he's kind of like dying, so then you go kill a deer, you get meat from the deer, you bring him the meat, that's step 1, and then step 2 is go kill the dragon. So you could do that with this. Requires quest. Requires level, just requires the player to be above that level before the quest is shown to them, is even available. So if I say 10 here, and I enter the room, I won't see the option for the quest. So we're not going to do any of these here, except we're going to say the quest is never repeatable. Once you rescued the princess, you're done. So we're going to set this to -1. This is now changed to the quest is not repeatable. Good. Okay. Inquiring is what a mob says when you enter his room and you are eligible for his quest. So if you've completed the prereqs, if you're high enough level, and if you've not already completed the quest and it's not repeatable, then you will be eligible for this quest and you will see inquire commands when you enter. So here we're going to say the inquire commands is say, oh good, thank heavens, a good Samaritan, you must help me, please. All right, that's what he says when you enter the room. And sometimes you can create quests that are sort of invisible, because by default you can use the inquire command to make a mob execute that command, or you can specify certain words where, for example, here I could have a word that would say like need or help or something like that, and just saying that will make the mob give you his inquire commands. If you want to have a hidden quest, a quest where you must say the right thing for him to tell you what to do, and there is one of those in Bluefinch that hardly anyone has ever found, then you define an inquire trigger, which is a word to trigger the inquire, and you make the inquire command not available. So then the only way to inquire it is via the word. But here we're just going to say, we're just going to keep it as this, and then we're going to add a help as a trigger word. So it now displays that. Right. I might have said something slightly incorrect. I don't remember. But inquiring is the commands that are executed by the mob when you either run the inquiring command or when one of the inquiring triggers is set in the room. Inquiring entrance commands is what the mob will say when you enter his room and you're eligible for the quest. Yeah, I did say that badly earlier. So actually, this has to be an inquire entrance command. And there's this option here of how much do you want to wait before repeating it again. So it gets really annoying when you have a mob who says 3 things when you enter his room, and you exit, enter, that now he's saying the same thing 3 times with different things being kind of threaded among each other. If you want to avoid that, then you set a delay of repeating the entrance command. By default, it's 10 seconds. You can set it to 0 if you really want, or you can make it higher. Here we're saying wait 30 seconds. So let me remove this. Okay. So when you enter his room, if you call for his quest, he tell you, thank heavens, you must help me. The inquire, the idea is you're asking him help you how, right? So we'll say help and how. And then he will actually tell you what it is that he wants from you. My daughter has been abducted by the dragon in the tower to the east. I sent someone after her. Maybe we'll have that different command so you can see. Say, I sent someone after her yesterday and he did not come back. I fear for the worst. And maybe that's why that guy had the key, because for some reason the woman had the key to the tower. That guy had it in his pocket. He died. That's what happened, right? Okay. So now we have the thing that the mob is going to say when you first enter his room, and then the thing that he's going to say when you ask him what to do via either the inquire command or the help and the how keywords. So then you have to define an objective, right? Which is, well, what is it that you want actually? And in this case, it's pretty easy. We want to kill the dragon, right? Because killing the dragon will inherently mean that you rescued the princess. So there's currently 3 kinds of objectives that you can define. There's item received. So say that this guy wants meat because he's starving. You could define an objective that is item received is meat, quantity is 1, and then if you give him 1 piece of meat, the quest will be complete and you will get the rewards that he had in mind for you. Mob killed is the one we're going to do, and gold received, it means that yeah, she's pretty screwed, right? She's been there for like a whole day, and I bet the dragon's been feeding her well. So it really is kind of dire. But I have faith in our adventurer, so it'll be all right. So gold means that you define a way for essentially the mob is asking you to give him gold in order to complete his quest. So Patrick has a neat quest in the Unbroken World where there is kind of a shady guy who asks you to... He's trying to sell a statue back to you that you're looking for, and you can actually also kill him for it, right? So that's a good example where you can either pay him in gold to complete the quest, or you can just kill him and then turn in the thing for another quest, right? But we're not doing that here. We're doing mob killed. So it's going to give you a drop down. We're going to select the enormous dragon. Quantity is 1. I don't know if that really needs to be there. Well, maybe we can say you want to kill 4 deers. Yeah. But we just want to kill 1 dragon. And then rewards. There are 5 different kinds of rewards from a quest. You can reward someone with a specific item, an item that you created a template for. You can reward someone with a random item, which will use the same random profiles as you defined for the merchants. So if you create one random profile, then you can use them for either your quest rewards or your merchant inventory. You can reward experience, where if someone completes a quest, then you'll level up or whatever, or get closer to your level. You can receive gold, or the standing in a faction of your choice can be increased or decreased, actually. So that's how we do the clanning quests at the beginning, right? So in this case, we're just going to reward... we're going to do 2. We're going to give you experience and gold, because he's actually a wealthy nobleman. Not wealthy enough to have, proper protection for his daughter, but he's still pretty wealthy and he's grateful, so that's cool. So experience will be 100. And then gold will be, say, 100 also. Okay, so now we have our entrance command, we have our inquiring command, we have our objectives, we have our rewards, and now we have to define we don't have to, but we're going to define a completion command, which is what is it that this mob says when you've completed the quest. So he's going to be overjoyed, right? He's going to open his eyes wide. So you'll say, you have brought her back. Say, I am overjoyed. I will never let her out of my sight again, which is not what you were hoping to hear, because you would like to see her again, but it is what it is. And same options as for inquiring, where you can define certain completion triggers. So you can have certain quests that are only completed if someone says the right word in the room. You can take away the completion command, so that the only way to complete it is through a completion trigger, and that using the complete command will not work. You can despawn on completion for a certain period of time. So sometimes you have some quests where they're like, actually we'll probably do this in this case. We won't, because the mob won't despawn. But there are sometimes where you're completing a quest for a mob, and then the mob says, well, I will now journey, to this faraway land and alert my peers of this event. Well, if the mob is still here after he said that, you're kind of like, well, why isn't he going now? So despawn on completion followed by duration will sort of mean that the mob will go away for however long you specify. So if I say 60 here, when I complete this quest, this mob is going to turn invisible for 60 seconds, and then he'll turn back to visible. Complete silently means that the quest will complete and you will not see you have completed a quest message. It will just complete and not say anything. So you can use that to have quests that don't really feel like quests, but in the end up asking you for something, and then once you receive it, give something in return, and just kind of do it in a more immersive way. Because when you say, hey, your quest is not complete, that's cool, that's informative, but if you have someone who's deep into roleplay and stuff, you're like, wait, what's a quest, right? So you can actually make it so that all this stuff is kind of in the background. Last is completion action, and completion action give you alternate commands to complete the quest. So a completion trigger, that field up here, is a field that you have to say. A completion action is a command that you have to enter. And the first quest that everyone encounters in the introduction is actually that. There's actions on the boy who is in the cocoon on the ceiling, and I've defined all the actions that people have tried. So there's like cut web and cut silk and free boy, and I forget where all the other ones are, but you can define a number of commands, and all of those will work in that room for that quest while that quest is not completed. And by default, it will show the first one of those as the command. So we're going to say here, we're going to say that it's called deliver princess. Or we'll also say deliver girl. And either of those will work. Anything that's like in between the ors, it will work. But it will show the first one as the default action. So we're going to do that here. So he's not going to despawn. And it's not going to complete silently. And then maybe if you say rescued, it also works. So then if you say, hey, I have rescued her, it will complete the quest. If this will only work if the objectives have been met, right? But like, we want people, you want to try to avoid the guess the syntax game as much as you can. So we give you lots of tools for how you want the quest to be completed. Oh, this actually wants a 0, huh? Okay. All right, cool. So we have our first quest. It's tied to this nobleman. And as soon as we enter the world, we should be able to inquire. So that's cool. The next thing we have to do is we're going to load that skeleton I talked about who has the key, who was the guy, you remember the nobleman sent a dude who failed, right? And he will be in a little alcove. So we're going to create an item that will be the corpse. So that's an example where it's fine to use the versus a. The corpse of an adventurer. And it will be a container because we're going to put a key in it. It will be level 1. And we're going to make it not pickable because you don't want to run off with a corpse, carrying a corpse on your back. How are you going to kill a dragon carrying a corpse on your back? It would be ridiculous. So item is not pickable. It is a container though. And that item is going to load a key. And the point of the key is I'm going to teach you about room checks. So there will be a rusty key. And it's level 1 and it's inert, doesn't have to do anything. Maybe we'll make it a quest item just so I can show you the little quest tooltip. And the note will be key to enter dragon's room. All right, cool. Go here, and then in the corpse of an adventurer, we are going to say that. Right, so we have to do that via loader because that's not a mob. And although you can define an item inventory the same way that you can define a mob inventory, and then every time that item will be loaded, it will for sure have that in. I don't have that in the UI, so I will add the Trello card. Add item template inventory to new builder. Boom. Creating work for myself. All right, so we're gonna load the corpse in this alcove. So the loaders are zone construct. So we go to the zone. We're gonna say add, and we're gonna say skeleton and key. And this one never needs to respawn because the key will always exist and the skeleton will always exist. Description, you can leave a note for yourself. This will load the skeleton that holds the key to the dragon's lair. Okay. And we're going to add 2 rules. We're going to add 1 rule, which is the item we just created, which is the corpse of an adventurer, which is going to load in this room, in the alcove. And then, am I going to run into that bug here? Those. I think I am. Where it's not going to let me select the output of the rule. Come on, work. Damn it. Yeah, I entered that bug with it. That's going to be a bummer. It's not going to have the key. I'm going to have to cheat and load the key on the ground and pretend that it was on the skeleton. Bummer. Well, it is what it is. Okay, so we'll load this key in here as well. Yeah, it's too bad because there's 2 different ways to do this and they're both broken right now. Oh well, dev life. Okay. So the princess, of course, is at the top of the tower because the dragon definitely wants to keep her for himself. So we're going to use the quick add feature for her because we already have the room selected here, right? So we're going to select her. And all we have to do is click the 1 button, load mob in room, boom, it added the rule for us. And now the princess is on top of the tower, right? We want to make sure, and also let me load the dragon. So we're gonna go up here, Now we're going to say an enormous dragon. Boom. Now the dragon is here. Okay. So here's the deal. We cannot enter the room of the princess until the dragon is killed, obviously, right? So we're going to create a room check, which is a feature that is used all the time, to put a restriction on you being allowed to enter the princess's room while the dragon is still alive. And the way that you have room checks is there are inherently preventative actions. So room checks prevent people from doing things. And in this case, we want the room check to look at whether the dragon is alive or not, right? So the room check has to be in the room of the dragon, which is where we are right now. You can see here that if we look at the loads, the enormous dragon is loaded. So we're going to go here, and we're going to add this room check. For this, before doing this, actually, let me grab the ID of the dragon, because I believe that I will need it. So the dragon is ID 267. Go back to the room. Let's go to the right room, preferably, which is this one. And we're going to add the room check. So the name of the room check is going to be must kill the dragon. There are 7 kinds of room checks. So the first one is inventory, where if a certain item is in your inventory, you will be prevented from either entering or exiting the room that you're in. Item is not an inventory. That's the opposite. And a good example of that is that's how you do keys. So if you want to prevent someone from exiting to the north, unless they have a key in their inventory, you would say that the check is not an inventory. You would pass the ID of, we're actually going to do this, but you'll pass the ID of the key, you'll select the direction, and then you will select a failure message for what does it say when the person is prevented from doing the action. Equipped, that is, you will be prevented from doing something if you have something equipped. So say that like you're entering part of a dungeon where there's like a super mythical sword that's mega OP that will allow you to kill a boss that otherwise would be unkillable, but you don't want that sword to exist out in the real world. You can create a room check where you say, if this sword is equipped, don't let the dude exit. They will have to drop to unequip it before they exit it. If you do that, you might want to add another check that they don't have it in inventory either, because otherwise they'll just exit the room and equip it somewhere else. But this is one of the building blocks that lets you do that. Not equipped is the opposite. So if you want to have an area where only the worthy wielding the Sword of Arthur can enter the Merlin's crypt or whatever, do it that way. Mob is present is the one that we're going to use here. So it will prevent you from usually use that with an exit one, where it will prevent you from exiting unless you've killed the mob that is blocking your way out. When you start the introduction, you encounter this immediately with the first spider, where you can't progress until you've killed it. This is how we do it. Faction below is how all of the private faction rooms currently are constructed. So you can say you can't enter this room unless you have at least faction membership of 100. Health below is how the recovery room works in the introduction, where you can't exit the room until your health is back to full. You select the check that is health below. For the argument, you give what is the percentage of health the person needs to have. And the intent is for this to be part of every death room, but I need to add them and I haven't done that. So here we're going to add mob is present. We're going to prevent someone from exiting as long as the mob is in this room. And so here we have an option. We can either not set a direction, and what that will do is if you enter this room, you're on that dragon. You can't flee because all of your flee directions will be prevented because that mob is still here. That's a little cruel. I recommend not doing that. Unless you really go for that and you have a disclaimer where a mob says, be really careful before you enter here. You won't be able to exit and it'll be to the death, something like that. Leave them an exit. So you can define which room you want to be checked. So in this case, we're going to say, up. You can't go up from the room while the dragon is still alive. And the argument in this case is the ID of the dragon. The failure message is, what do you display if you were not able to get to that room? And in this case, it will say, a dragon blocks your path, because the dragon not going to let you get across, for sure. You can do something cooler, like, a dragon, shoots streaks of fire out of his nostril to block your path, or go fancy, whatever you want. That's the beauty of text-based games. Create the immersion. But so we're just going to do this. We're going to say, you must kill the dragon to go in here. And then we are going to add a second room check to this room. And we're going to say, not only does the dragon need to be dead for you to exit north, but also you cannot enter this room at all unless you have the key in your inventory. And this is how we do keys and doors, essentially. And you have to be careful with those, because you could create a check that just says, you could create like an entry check. So let's look at the other option. The other option is you go in here and you create a room check, which is a preventive check from going up if you don't have the key, unless you have the key in your inventory. Here's the problem with that. Once you go up, there's nothing preventing you from dropping the key in your inventory and then going back down. And if you can do that, you can't go back up, because the key that you need to go up is now in the one location that is currently inaccessible. So you have to be a little bit careful with those. But in this case, it's an easy fix that if this room prevents entry in both directions unless you have the key, well, if the person drops the key up here, they're not going to be able to re-enter, so they're going to pick it back up. So that's the safe thing. So we're going to add a second room check here. That's going to be must have key to enter. And the check will be that you will be prevented from entering. Oh yeah, let me get I need the item ID of the key. Eventually I'll have it do a proper lookup, but that's more like it would be like a nice to have. So anyways. All right, so for this we're going to say you cannot enter if you do not have, from all directions, if you don't have this key. And then the failure message will be dragon's lair is locked. This is a little arbitrary because we're not explaining why the dragon's lair is locked, but that's your job as a world builder, right? Okay, so now hopefully we need a key to enter and we need to kill the dragon before we can get to the princess. Once we get to the princess, we're going to want her to be excited in some way, I guess, that like she is seeing finally someone who is not the dragon. So we're going to give her an entrance reaction to you entering her room, where she will manifest how happy she is to see you, and she will follow you so that you can bring her back to her dad. So let's do that. We're going to look at the princess. We're going to have a reaction for her, which will be room is entered. She will say, yes, my savior, you have saved me from this terrible beast. You have my forever gratitude. Say, please bring me back to my father as, I was going to say ASAP, but it is a text-based game. Let's write full sentences. Please bring me back to that father. I have been so afraid. Okay, and so you can have as many commands in here as you want. So we're going to add one here that's going to say follow whoever it is that saved you. I believe you can say name here, and I will look this up right now against the cave, because we do this in the cave. So if I look at and we do this in a quest completion command for the boy. Will that actually work under reaction? I'm not so sure. We'll see. It'll be a test. If it doesn't work, I'll teach you something else about having a builder character. But I believe this will work. I believe actor key, or can I just say actor? No, that should work. If it doesn't, that might work. Okay, but as soon as you enter her room, she should do all that. We are getting close to the moment of truth. Can I actually defeat this dragon? I don't even know. Okay. So, we have a road, we have our like little warm-up guys, we have the skeleton, we have the dragon, we have the princess, we have the dad. I think we have everything. What else am I forgetting? I think we have everything. We're not doing transformations. We're not doing paths. Let me just show you real quick what pathing does. let's say that there's like some guy who wants to go into the tower but is feeling very cowardly, but he's kind of like he's nervous, so he's pacing around, and you want to create within this zone a few rooms where he can pace without creating a whole new zone. That's what paths are for. So you go in here and then you create the path. So we'll say pacing path. And then you click this little button here that says add path room. And by default, it will select the room that you already have selected. Otherwise, you can select another by entering its name. So if we say road, right, it's searchable like anything else. Oops. Okay. And then you just click add. And then you go here, add, here, add. You have now created a path in these 3 rooms, and you can create loader rules that target that path. So you can now say that this mob, we're not going to do it, but maybe some other nobleman is pacing along that path, and he will load with a roaming directive to stay on that path. So that's paths. Don't need checks. Not outside the tower. I don't think there's anything else. Let us boot this world up and go through this adventure together. Moment of truth. All right. So the world is in here. The rune tower. Great. Create character. I'm going to create myself. It will be Mr. Thibault. Create character. Okay. And we're going to enter the world. Okay. So we have entered the world. You see that these river rooms are visible despite the fact that we have not visited them because they are water rooms. Landmarks room would do the same thing. And we have a sword on the ground, which does some damage and gives you a bunch of strength and a bunch of extra health. So we can now get the sword, and we wield it automatically, of course. Our health has now jumped up, and we have gained a bunch of power. There's a nobleman here. As soon as we enter his room, he says, "Thanks heaven, a good Samaritan. You must help me, please." And so there's 2 things you can do now. You can go here, and you can say, oh yeah, he's also a merchant, so you get all these actions. But you can inquire from him, or you can just say, what kind of help do you need? This will trigger his inquire command. So he is now executing these commands. You can also do this if you do this via the inquire command. They both work, right? Because he's a merchant, you can list what he has. Oh, this is also a bug that I have entered, but I have not fixed yet. Merchants currently are broken in single-player worlds. They don't load. They load, but they don't load their merchant inventory. Whoopsie daisy! I will fix it. If you want to see how merchants work, go in the Unbroken World. There's lots of them there, and they are fantastic. But so this guy will not be selling anything. Also, it would appear that I did not start with any gold. I was supposed to. Start with gold feature not working, maybe. Okay. Now we can go around our world. Okay, so you see how this doe is here, and she has this reaction that she looks nervous when you enter her room, and because we set her to load in that room specifically, she will not roam around. She will always be in that room, unless you load a transformation template in your loader where you change her roam attribute to roaming, and then she will roam. But by default, she's set to static. This is the forest where there are a bunch of does in the forest, but they are in random locations. And I guess that I only loaded one of them. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to increase the number of does that load here. And instead of just one of them, we're going to load 6 of them. Not 67, that'd be a lot. But we're going to load 6 of them, which means that sometime in the next 6 minutes, we are going to have more does in this forest. But for now, we're going to start slaughtering them because we need to probably gain at least enough to get a couple of skills to beat this dragon. So she's right to feel nervous because it's happening. Interestingly, the doe is fighting back. I thought I had set her to passive. She is supposed to be passive. So there's something else going on here. And actually the passive doe is kicking my ass. Whoopsie daisy. Alright, I'm going to do a couple things here. I am going to change this sword to be two-handed. Oh, I'm missing a field. No, there's more fields here. Cool. Equipment types. I forgot about this. So when you define equipment, there's an additional section here in addition to advanced that comes up. And you can say that it's a two-handed weapon versus a one-handed weapon. You can define its quality, which makes it look yellow rather than white. And usually if it's a magical item that's yellow, it's got a stats boost. So here we'll say it's imbued. And then the hid message is what it will tell you. So it will slash or slashes based if you're first person or second person. So two-handed is going to make it hit a lot harder. I'm going to double my strength because she was really hitting me quite hard. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of health regen. Okay. And I'm going to exit the world. And when I re-enter it, the sword should be changed. Yeah, see, so it's now imbued, it's now two-handed, it hits harder. So I should have a much easier time killing these does. Let's kill her. Oh yeah, look at that. Slash, slash, slash. Die. Okay, so I am not level 2 yet. And the loader has not rerun yet, so we still only have that one doe. I will kill another one. And then I will go see the dragon, I suppose. Each doe is supposed to it has this deer pelt, right? So you can loot it this way. The loot command is the same as get all. So you can just do that. That's kind of nice. Now, when did the doe do the head shaking again? Oh, that was a new doe. Okay, interesting. So that means a new doe is loaded into the room. Yeah. So this message came from this doe entering the world because the loader ran, and since we increased the quantity of them to load by the loader, there's now a bunch more does in here, and they will just roam around. They won't just stay in one room. So we now have our first ability, which means we're going to be able to demolish these does. I would like to get to level 3 before fighting the dragon. Then we're just going to kill a couple more of these. And the pelts have a sell value, right? I think they did. So that guy might actually be able to buy them from us, even though we can't buy anything from him. It's possible that works. Okay, cool. So now I've got 2 skills on level 3. Let me check the selling. Is he buying? Huh. Oh yeah, because his merchant inventory didn't get loaded. The game doesn't consider him to be a merchant. A merchant in the game's definition is a mod that has merchant inventory, and he doesn't. So, all right, let's test the other features that we built. We go inside the tower, up, 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 and now let's try to go up. We can't. The dragon's lair is locked. Why? Because we don't have the key. So ideally, this key is inside of this corpse, so we'll just pretend that we just enter the room like this. We see that the key is in there. If you hit the get from action, it will translate to get all the thing you had selected, so now you have the key. With the key, you can go up and then you can go down. So now you can enter the dragon's room. However, you cannot get past the dragon because he blocks your path, but you're able to flee, right? Because that room check only goes up. So now I'm ready to kill the dragon, and I'm going to do it. He's going down. So we're going to start with a counter. I'm going to bash him. He bashed me, right? Because this is a mob that uses abilities. So, that looks like a nice text. Let's not spam at all. Okay, I'm so going to kill this dragon. This is going to be real nice. He bashed me one last time. I will bash him one last time, even though he only has 1 health. All right. The dragon is dead, which means that now we can go 1 up. No! Why is this not working? Terrible. Oh, you know why it's not working? Because he respawned right away. He respawned right away because we didn't change his respawn time to be 0. It has to be -1 for him to not respawn. And he responded very quickly because when it's set to 0, it means respawn immediately. So good news is we get to kill the dragon again. And why wouldn't we? So start with the bash. Then we're going to counter whatever he does next. We counter 2 things. Theoretically, that's not possible, but that's the nature of asynchronous message queues. Sometimes some timestamps don't not the same as if it was a single process. All right, so we're rebashing this guy. He's gonna die for real now, like dead. He stunned me 1 more time. So this is an example of a mob using the same abilities as me, and it makes the fights more interesting. So I killed him twice. So I really earned my keep for this. And now I get to go up. And now the princess is in my room, and I am her savior. I have saved her from this terrible beast. I have her forever gratitude. And she follows me, so that worked. So now everywhere I go... She's not actually following me. Wasn't she following me? Bug. Oh, you know what? I actually know why she's not following me. This is interesting and fun. She's not following me because there's a room check in this room that you can't exit this room unless you have a key. So I'm exiting, but we need a second key to be able to bring her along with me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a set of features that exists only on builder characters, and I'm going to enable that. So this is one of the items that I added here, that I need to expose the option to make a player a builder character. Right now, the only way to do that is going straight to the back end and just kind of setting that flag. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that he's an immortal. Let me exit. He's an immortal character. And now, when I re-enter, if I say who, you'll see that I have a little squiggly line. This marks immortal characters. And now I have some extra commands that I didn't used to have before. For example, if my health gets low, I can do regen and it will bring him all back to full. If I try to use my stamina a little bit, regen back to full. Pretty helpful, right? Okay. Now, say that I'm a builder and I want another one of those keys so I can give one of them to the princess, right? How do I do that? Well, I need to load another one. There's a command builder called load for you to load items that would otherwise be loaded via loaders. And what you need to do that is you need to know the template ID. So to get the template ID, there's a get a, all in one word, command, which stands for get attribute that builders can do on anything. So in this case, I'm going to say get a, which is short for get attr, get a key, and then I'm going to ask for its template ID. And it's going to tell me that it's 181, which means that if I do load item 181, I have now loaded another key into the world. So I can give this key to the princess, and now if I'm right, she should be able to follow me. Yes, she followed me, right? She came here, she came here. You can do this on anything. So, if I want to see the name of the corpse, it's the corpse of a dragon. It can come in handy if you're stuck behind a door sometimes and you want to teleport there. There's a command called jump, which allows you to jump to the relative ID of the room that you're in. And to do that, you can do get a room east, and it will show you the east exit code, and the last digit in there is the relative ID of that room. So if I say jump 28, it moves me to that room. If I say jump 1, it will always bring me back to the first room in that world. Go back to 28, so that princess comes with me. Okay. So it's funny, her entrance reaction is triggering over and over right now because I guess you keep entering her room. So now we're going to go to her father, who is here, and we can now complete the quest. So we could set... okay, let's do this actually. So we're going to go back to that quest. If you want him at this point to say, "Oh my God, you found her, she's here," the way that you can do that is you go in the quest and then you define a completion entrance command. And then maybe you say he faints to the ground, right? Something like that. And we do that. Now, if I purge this mob, so purge is the command that just deletes anything from the game. It's another builder command. So if I purge the nobleman, he's no longer here. I think that when he gets re-imported, the quest definition should get updated. It's possible that it's not a bug, but it's possible that that quest definition already exists in the database and that therefore it will actually not change its definition. So it may not work, but if it does, okay, so he's back. Let's see if it works or not. So I'm going to enter his room. Yeah, it worked. So this is a completion entrance command. It's being shown to me because not only am I eligible for the quest, but I have done what I need to do to complete it. So to complete this quest, I can either say the word rescued, I can use the command complete, or I can use the commands deliver princess or princess girl. I don't know why I enter that as an option, but that's one thing. So, and the first completion command is going to be listed as the default on the hover of the nobleman. So you see here it says deliver princess. So I'm going to complete it that way. The quest is complete. I receive the gold and the experience. So now my gold has gone up to 100, hopefully. Nice. He is overjoyed. He will never let her out of his sight again. That's what they always say. Until another dragon comes along. And then that's it. You have basically, that's the end of this little world. There's really nothing else to do. You have, I mean, you can keep killing does, I guess. You know, you're like super strong right now. And the princess is going to come with you too. So like really, you guys can just hang out. Well, that's nice, I guess. But it is limited. So cool. We built a whole dungeon from scratch in a little bit less than 2 hours with some kind of a narrative cohesion. Let me try to think if there's anything else that I haven't covered. Nope. So if you go to world players, if you go here, yeah, you can see that in my map, I've seen everything, right? If I create another character in here, we'll call him Teebs. I enter this. So the interesting thing is that you'll see that Teebs comes, he hasn't discovered anything, like it's a completely different world. It's the same world, but it's a different instance of it. And, you know, if I go in here, when I go here to look at Teebs' stuff, he needs to exit for the data to be saved. I see all the rooms that he's seen, you know, he hasn't done anything, right? But I can see his map, basically, which is really useful. Like initially, it's actually pretty interesting. When we first created Bluefinch Village, we kind of noticed that like everyone was going west to the mountains, and that they were never going like southeast. Or a couple people told us that, and so we went and looked at like people's maps, and we noticed that because the orientation of the town used to be east-west, and on the east was kind of like the dead end of the waterfall going off the cliff, and on the west was the road straight to the mountains. So a lot of people would just go west and then not stop. So we saw that very clearly looking at the maps of new players. So we were able to then say, well, let us relay out the town so that the obvious direction to go takes you to where we want to go. So that's a pretty useful feature. But no, I think we've basically covered most everything for the basic features of world building, and just a little bit under 2 hours, but not too much under 2 hours. So thank you very much for having followed us today. Let me see. All right, cool. The next episode, I do not know what it will be about. I think it will be either back to doing some coding, or we will do maybe a little bit of gameplay. Maybe we'll do trying to create a brand new character in the multiplayer world and then seeing how far we can go in 2 hours or something like that, while I talk about design decisions that we did along the way and stuff like that. Otherwise, I might just build a feature or something like that. We will see. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will